There comes a moment in every person's life when they are called to return to themselves. A moment when the world they've been giving to, pouring into, nurturing, and sustaining begins to dim their own inner light. And in that moment, you're not just experiencing a relationship imbalance. You're standing at the threshold of your own evolution. For far too long, you've been living in a version of yourself molded not by your desires, not by your worth, but by what another expects of you, often without gratitude, without recognition, and without reverence. When someone begins to take you for granted, it's not always loud. It's quiet at first. It starts with the forgotten thank yous, the missed calls, the assumptions that you'll always be there. It creeps in slowly, like a fog over a once clear landscape. But the body keeps score. The heart records the subtleties. And over time, the energetic weight becomes heavy. Not because you are weak, but because your soul is wise enough to recognize when it is no longer being honored. You don't teach someone the cost of taking you for granted by shouting, by fighting, or by playing games. You teach them through alignment, through reclaiming your essence, through embodying the truth that your presence is not a given. It is a gift. Your time, your love, your emotional availability, your support, they are sacred. And when you begin to remember that the energy shifts, we are vibrational beings. Everything we experience is energy before it becomes matter. The thoughts you entertain, the emotions you feel, and the actions you take create a field around you, a magnetic signal that the universe responds to. When you exist in a state of undervaluation, the signal you send is one of scarcity, of doubt, of unworthiness. And the people around you, consciously or unconsciously, mirror that signal back to you. That's why cycles repeat. That's why apologies don't change behavior, because the field hasn't changed. But the moment you choose yourself, not as a reaction, but as a revolution, the field reorganizes. You begin to broadcast a new signal, one that says, I am enough. I am whole. I am not here to be tolerated. I am here to be celebrated. And in that moment, the person who once overlooked you begins to feel the absence of what they once assumed would always be there. This isn't about punishment. This isn't about revenge. This is about energetic recalibration. It's about drawing a new boundary not out of bitterness, but out of truth. You see, people can only meet you at the level you meet yourself. If you consistently prioritize their needs over your own, if you dim your light to make them comfortable, if you stay silent in the face of disregard, you train them, without words, that your soul is negotiable. But when you begin to show up differently, when you speak from the power of your heart, when you honor your intuition, when you invest your energy only where it is valued, the dynamic shifts. They feel it. They sense it. They may not understand it intellectually, but energetically, they are now interacting with a version of you that no longer seeks validation from them. That's where the real teaching happens. When someone takes you for granted, it's often because you have overgiven. You've taught them that your boundaries are bendable, that your love is unconditional to the point of self-abandonment. But love, real love, is not about depletion. It is about reciprocity. It is about mutual reverence. And when that is absent, the love turns into a contract of silent suffering. But you can rewrite the contract. You can decide, right now, that your love will no longer be a currency traded for crumbs of affection. You can decide that your energy is too precious to be spent convincing someone of your value. You can decide that your growth is more important than their comfort. And when you do, you liberate not just yourself, but them. Because in holding yourself to a higher standard, you invite them to rise or fall away. Growth is not always shared. Sometimes the lesson is in the loss. Sometimes the cost they must pay is the realization that access to you is never guaranteed, that your love had depth they never explored, that your silence was not weakness, it was grace, that your absence speaks a truth they refused to hear when you were present. This journey is not about making them feel the weight of your withdrawal. It's about feeling the lightness of your return. Because when you come home to yourself, when you prioritize your peace over their opinion, you no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer accept conditional love. You no longer make excuses for their inability to see you. Instead, you become the mirror that reflects what they refuse to recognize. The universe responds to clarity. When you become clear on what you will no longer tolerate, it moves to support you. Synchronicities appear. New connections form. Opportunities arise. Why? Because you are finally aligned with truth. And truth is magnetic. It draws in what is meant for you and repels what no longer resonates. So when you teach him the cost of taking you for granted, you're not just teaching him. You're teaching yourself that you are worthy of being chosen every day. Not by someone else, but by you. You're teaching yourself that boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to self-respect. You're teaching yourself that your energy is not disposable. It is divine. Let him feel your absence. Let him sit in the silence of your now. Let him witness your glow from a distance. Because it is often in the vacuum of your energy that people finally recognize its power. Not because you want them to suffer, but because you're no longer willing to suffer for their awakening. You are not here to be anyone's emotional crutch. You are not here to be convenient. You are here to be seen, to be valued, to be met fully. Anything less is not your destiny. It is your distraction. And the moment you realize that, you stop chasing closure and start creating wholeness. Wholeness doesn't come from being accepted by them. It comes from accepting yourself, from choosing peace over proving, from letting go of the idea that you must be needed to be loved. You are already enough. And when you embody that, you become untouchable, not in arrogance, but in essence. This is the frequency shift from lack to abundance, from fear to love, from victimhood to authorship. You write a new narrative not by changing him, but by transforming you. And in that transformation, you either inspire him to evolve or reveal that he never could. Either way, you win. Because you chose truth over illusion. You chose growth over stagnation. You chose yourself. And perhaps he will one day understand what he lost. Perhaps he will try to return with apologies and promises. But by then, you will have become a new version of you. One that no longer fits into the old story. One that loves so deeply and so completely. She would rather be alone than be overlooked. This is not about closing your heart. It's about elevating your standards, about honoring the divine within you, about recognizing that every time you dim yourself for someone else's comfort, you betray your soul. But every time you choose to rise, you give others permission to do the same. So let this be your turning point. Not in anger, not in pain, but in power. The power of remembrance, the power of reclamation, the power of becoming who you were always meant to be, sovereign, radiant, and unapologetically whole. Because in the end, teaching him the cost of taking you for granted is really about teaching yourself the value of never abandoning your own light again.